Ride or die. The Cobra attack helicopter has 2 seats, a pilot and a co-pilot. That's it. No cargo space, no passenger area, no room for anyone else. The AH-1G Cobra is a sleek killing machine built for one purpose: deliver devastating firepower and get out fast. First Lieutenant Larry Taylor knows this. Every helicopter pilot in Vietnam knows this. On the night of June 18, 1968, none of it matters. 4 men are about to die in a rice paddy 30 miles northeast of Saigon. Taylor can hear the desperation in their voices over the radio. He can hear the gunfire in the background, constant, overwhelming, the sound of men fighting their last fight. Command has already written them off. A rescue helicopter was dispatched, then recalled, too dangerous. The mission is scrubbed, return to base. Taylor hears the order. He understands what it means. Those 4 men will be overrun in minutes. They'll be killed or captured. Either way, they're dead. He makes a decision that will take 55 years to be recognized as heroism instead of insubordination. He's going to land his 2-seat Cobra gunship in the middle of a firefight and figure out how to fit 4 extra men on an aircraft with no room for them. This is the story of the most impossible helicopter rescue in Vietnam War history. Larry Lee Taylor was born on February 12, 1942, in Chattanooga, Tennessee. He grew up in a city that would eventually produce 3 Medal of Honor recipients. Taylor would be the 3rd. He attended the University of Tennessee in Knoxville, joining the Reserve Officers Training Corps. A good student, a solid cadet. Nothing about him suggested he would become a legend. In June 1966, Taylor graduated and was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the United States Army. They assigned him to an armor unit, tanks, ground combat, the traditional path for a young officer. Taylor had other ideas. He preferred aerial machinery. He applied for flight training and was accepted. First to Fort Walters, Texas for primary helicopter school, then to Fort Rucker, Alabama for advanced training. On June 30, 1967, he qualified as an Army aviator. 2 months later, in August 1967, the Army sent him to South Vietnam, to Bien Hoa Air Base, northeast of Saigon, to D Troop, 1st Squadron, 4th Cavalry Regiment, part of the 1st Infantry Division. Taylor arrived to find 9 brand-new Bell AH-1G Cobra attack helicopters waiting. The Cobra was revolutionary, fast, maneuverable, deadly, a narrow fuselage only 3 feet wide that made it nearly impossible to hit from the ground, a 20mm cannon in a chin turret, rocket pods on stub wings, miniguns that could fire 4,000 rounds per minute. The Cobra could do things the old Huey gunships couldn't. It could fly low and fast. It could strike hard and vanish before the enemy could react. It could provide close air support that kept soldiers alive. Taylor and his fellow pilots flew constantly, supporting long-range reconnaissance patrols, LRRP teams, small units of 4 to 6 men who walked deep into enemy territory to gather intelligence. Those boys wouldn't be out 15 minutes before the Viet Cong surrounded them, Taylor would later recall. The electromagnetic indicators in the Cobras showed the direction of the LRRP team. The Cobra flew fast enough to reach them quickly. Getting there was easy. Getting back to base was harder. The indicators didn't show the return route. Not everyone who got lost made it back. Taylor flew mission after mission, day and night, 24 hours on call. He was scared most of the time, he admitted later, but that's what they did. Over his year in Vietnam, Taylor would fly more than 2,000 combat missions. He would be engaged by enemy fire 340 times. He would be shot down 5 times. He would earn 61 combat decorations. But on the night of June 18, 1968, he would do something no one had ever done before. The call came at 2100 hours, 9 o'clock at night. Higher command had sent 4 LRRP teams to reconnoiter a small village near the hamlet of Ap Go Cong, northeast of Saigon. Taylor knew it was a doomed mission from the start. He'd told his commanding officer as much. But sometimes the higher echelons of combat didn't listen to the guys pulling the triggers. The radio radio crackled and screeched. Then the words came through as clear as the desperation in the voice. "We're surrounded." It was Sergeant Dave Hill, Team Wildcat 2, 4 men, team leader, Private First Class Robert Elsner, Sergeant Billy Cohen, Specialist Four Gerald Paddy, and Hill, the assistant team leader. They'd walked into the area on foot, a completely flat rice paddy region. Being dropped by helicopter would have blown their cover, so they walked, moving through the paddies at night, water up to their chins, trying to stay invisible. They had a starlight scope, an early generation night vision device, primitive by modern standards, but an advantage American forces had over the enemy. Through the scope, Hill could see them. North Vietnamese soldiers, Viet Cong fighters, everywhere, moving through the trees, taking positions, surrounding Wildcat 2 completely. 80 to 100 enemy soldiers, maybe more, 4 Americans. Hill settled in with his team and called for support. Taylor's heart pounded. He clenched his fists to keep them from shaking. He and his co-pilot, Chief Warrant Officer 2Jo Ratliff, had 2 minutes maximum to get off. Strap in, turn the ship on, crank it up, and get in the air. They made it. Taylor's wingman, Captain Roger Trickler, launched in his Cobra as well. Call sign Dark Horse 3-2. 2 attack helicopters racing through the night toward 4 men who were about to die. Taylor arrived over the area minutes later. He couldn't see the team through the darkness. He radioed Hill. "I need you to mark your position." Hill knew what that meant. Light a flare, and every enemy soldier in the area would know exactly where they were. But without the flare, Taylor couldn't help them. Hill lit the flare. The flare went up. The fight was on. Enemy fire lit up the night. Muzzle flashes from the tree line. Tracer rounds arcing through the air. The ground erupted with automatic weapons fire directed at the helicopters. Taylor and Trickler dove in, flying dangerously low, making attack runs with miniguns and rockets. The Cobras screamed overhead, raining fire on the enemy positions. For 45 minutes, they hammered the tree line, rockets exploding in the jungle, miniguns tearing through vegetation, trying to open a hole, trying to give Wildcat 2 a chance to escape. Then Taylor heard a sound that only meant one thing. His helicopter was hit. A bullet punched through the fuselage. Then another, then another. 16 rounds total would strike Taylor's Cobra that night. According to Army standards, Taylor could have left the fight. He was hit. He was running out of ammunition. He'd done his job, but Lieutenant Taylor had his own sacred standards. You never leave a man on the ground. Taylor radioed for a rescue helicopter, a UH-1 Huey. They had room for passengers. They could extract the team while Taylor provided cover. Command responded. The rescue helicopter was being recalled. Too dangerous. The Huey would be shot down. Taylor heard the order clearly, or at least that's what the official record would eventually say. Years later, Taylor would claim there was radio interference. He couldn't quite make out what command was saying. Either way, Taylor and Trickler kept fighting. Both Cobras were nearly out of ammunition now. The enemy was still closing in. Wildcat 2 was almost out of ammunition too. On the ground, Hill and his team were down to their last magazines. A few grenades. That was it. Taylor surveyed the terrain. There was supposed to be an extraction point near the Dong Nai River, a place where Wildcat 2 could run to if they got in trouble. Taylor flew over the route. Enemy fire erupted from every direction. The tree line was crawling with North Vietnamese soldiers. If Wildcat 2 tried to run for that extraction point, they'd be cut down before they made it 50 yards. Taylor circled back. He had to think of something else. His minigun ran dry. No more ammunition, just the searchlight and the sound of the rotors. Taylor had an idea. It was insane, but it might work. He started making fake gun runs, diving toward enemy positions with his searchlight blazing. The enemy didn't know he was out of ammunition. They scattered, took cover, gave Wildcat 2 precious seconds to regroup. Taylor's co-pilot, Ratliff, looked at him. They were out of ammunition. They were almost out of fuel. Command had ordered them back to base. What are we going to do? Taylor knew what he was going to do. He'd known since the moment he heard Hill's voice on the radio. "I'm going down to get them." Taylor radioed Hill. "I need you to move 100 yards to the east. There's a clear spot. I'm coming in." Hill couldn't believe what he was hearing. Taylor was flying a Cobra, a 2-seat gunship. There was no room for passengers. "I'm on the ground for no more than 10 seconds, Taylor said. "You and your folks find a place on my ship and I'm gonna get us all out of here. Taylor ordered Trickler to make one final gun run, expend whatever ammunition remained, hit the enemy's western flank as hard as possible. Trickler dove in. His minigun roared, rockets streaked from his pods. The enemy positions erupted in fire and smoke. Taylor turned his Cobra toward the extraction point. He flipped on his landing lights, a beacon in the darkness, a target for every enemy soldier in the area. He descended. The rice paddy rushed up beneath him. Enemy fire intensified. Bullets snapped past the canopy. The Cobra shuddered as rounds struck the fuselage. Taylor didn't care. He kept descending. The skids touched down. Taylor left the rotors turning, left the landing lights blazing. On the ground, Hill and his team ran, splashing through the rice paddy, racing toward the light. They reached the Cobra and stopped. For a moment, they just stared at it. It was a two-seat gunship, rocket pods on the stub wings, landing skids. That was it. No doors, no cargo area, nowhere to sit. "Get on," Taylor shouted over the rotor noise. "Anywhere you can." Hill understood. He grabbed one of the rocket pods, climbed onto it, sat down with his legs dangling. Cohen took the other rocket pod. Elsner grabbed one of the landing skids. Paddy took the other skid. 4 men clinging to the outside of a Cobra attack helicopter, soaking wet from the rice paddy, exhausted from 45 minutes of combat, holding on for their lives. They beat on the side of the ship twice. The signal, haul ass. Taylor hauled ass. The Cobra lifted off, slowly, carefully. The added weight made it sluggish. The balance was all wrong. Enemy fire chased them into the air. Tracers streaked past. Taylor kept the helicopter low, just above the rice paddies, flying fast but not too fast. If he went too fast, the wind would rip the men off. They were wet. Wind at 150 miles per hour would turn them into icicles. They'd cramp up, let go, fall to their deaths. If he flew too slow, the enemy would shoot them down. Taylor found the balance, low and fast, but not too fast, following another helicopter that had arrived to guide him. 5 miles. That's how far they had to go. 5 miles to the nearest friendly position, a water treatment plant held by American forces. Hill clung to the rocket pod. The wind screamed in his ears. The rotor wash pounded him. His hands cramped. His arms burned. He focused on one thing. Don't let go. Cohen held tight on the other rocket pod. Elsner and Paddy gripped the skids. All 4 men rode that Cobra through the night, holding on because letting go meant death. Taylor's hands were steady on the controls. His eyes scanned the instruments, fuel gauge dropping, but they were going to make it. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Taylor saw the lights of the water plant. He descended, gentle as possible. The skids touched down. Hill and his team climbed off. Their hands were so cramped they could barely let go. They turned around. All 4 of them lined up in front of Taylor's Cobra. They saluted. Then they ran for cover before collapsing. Taylor lifted off again. His fuel gauge was in the red. He barely made it back to base. The next day, higher command was furious. Taylor had disobeyed a direct order. He'd been told to return to base. He'd ignored the order and attempted a reckless rescue that could have gotten everyone killed. There was talk of a reprimand, of disciplinary action. Then senior officers heard the full story. They heard what Taylor had done, how he'd kept 4 men alive for 45 minutes with nothing but fake gun runs and a searchlight, how he'd landed a Cobra gunship in the middle of a firefight and extracted 4 men from an aircraft with no passenger capacity. The reprimand never happened. Instead, Taylor received the Silver Star, the nation's 3rd highest award for valor. Taylor thought that was fair. He'd done his job. He'd brought his brothers home. He didn't think much more about it. Taylor continued flying missions for the rest of his tour. He left Vietnam in August 1968. He'd completed more than 2,000 combat missions, never lost a man. He served with the 2nd Armored Cavalry in West Germany. In August 1970, he left active duty with the rank of captain. In October 1973, he was discharged from the Army Reserve. He returned to Chattanooga, married his wife Toni, operated a successful roofing and sheet metal company, raised a family, lived a quiet life. He didn't see the men from Wildcat Two again, not for over 30 years. In 1999, Taylor attended a 1st Infantry Division long-range patrol ranger reunion in Branson, Missouri. Dave Hill was there. They recognized each other instantly. Hill walked straight up to Taylor. "That was the first time I could actually meet you and thank you for your bravery," Hill said. They'd been friends ever since. As the years passed, Hill and several others from that night started talking. Taylor had received the Silver Star, but the Silver Star didn't capture what he'd done, what he'd risked. "Larry not only did his job," Hill said, "he went way above and beyond his duty at great risk of life. It was a failure at the time to adequately recognize his valor, his courage, his dedication. We were determined to turn that around." Hill and the others contacted their congressman in Tennessee. They started the process of nominating Taylor for the Medal of Honor. The effort took more than 7 years. Each filing required new evidence, new witness statements, new documentation. The Medal of Honor is not easily earned, even when the actions clearly deserve it. In July 2023, President Joe Biden called Taylor personally. "Mr. President," Taylor said, "I thought you had to do something to receive the Medal of Honor." Biden laughed. "I've read your 201 file. Believe me, you qualify." On September 5, 2023, President Biden presented Captain Larry L. Taylor with the Medal of Honor in a ceremony at the White House. Dave Hill was there. Robert Elsner was there. The families of Billy Cohen and Gerald Paddy, who had both since passed away, were there. Taylor stood in the East Room, wearing his Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration, 55 years after the night that earned it. Biden spoke about valor, about duty, about what it means to refuse to leave a man behind. "When duty called, Larry did everything to answer," Biden said. "And because of that, he rewrote the fate of 4 families for generations to come. That's valor." After the ceremony, reporters asked Taylor about that night, about the decision to land, about riding back with 4 men clinging to a helicopter that had no room for them. "I knew that if I didn't go down and get them, they wouldn't make it," Taylor said, matter-of-factly. "I was doing my job." That's all he ever said about it, just doing his job. But the men who rode on the outside of that Cobra knew better. Hill knew better. Elsner knew better. The families of Cohen and Paddy knew better. "Hell, we were dead," Hill said. "The fortunes of war had turned against us that night." Taylor gave them 55 more years. Hill is now in his late 70s. Elsner lived a full life. Cohen and Paddy had families, children, grandchildren, all because one helicopter pilot heard a desperate call and decided that regulations about passenger capacity didn't matter as much as bringing his brothers home. Larry Taylor died on January 28, 2024, at his home in Signal Mountain, Tennessee. He was 81 years old. He'd been fighting cancer. He lived 4 months after receiving the Medal of Honor, long enough to know that his actions had finally been recognized, long enough to see his friends from Wildcat Two one last time, long enough to know that what he'd done mattered. The story of Larry Taylor is not about breaking rules or disobeying orders. It's about understanding that some principles transcend regulations. You never leave a man behind. That's not just a motto, it's a sacred standard. On the night of June 18, 1968, command said it was too dangerous. The rescue helicopter was recalled. The mission was scrubbed. Those 4 men were written off. Larry Taylor heard the order. Maybe he heard it clearly. Maybe radio interference made it unclear. Either way, he knew what he had to do. He landed a 2-seat attack helicopter in the middle of a firefight and found a way to fit 4 extra men on an aircraft with no room for them. That's not heroism to men like Larry Taylor. That's just the job. But to the men who rode that Cobra back to safety, clinging to rocket pods and landing skids, it was everything. Ride or die. That's what soldiers say. Taylor lived it. He gave 4 men the ride of their lives, and because of that, they didn't die. 55 years later, a grateful nation finally said, "Thank you." That's Captain Larry L. Taylor, call sign Dark Horse 32. The man who proved that impossible is just another word for hasn't been done yet.